Greetings. My name is William Keepin, and I want to introduce you to a very exciting book on the Holomovement developed by David Bohm. I'm so honored to be able to introduce it today. This book is entitled The Holomovement, Embracing Our Collective Purpose to Unite Humanity. And as we all know, nothing could be more important today than uniting humanity. The Holomovement is a term coined by physicist David Bohm, who is one of the most remarkable scientists who ever lived. As I summarize in the foreword to the book, David Bohm did some crucial theoretical work in quantum physics in 1952, which was developed further by physicist John Bell, and which has now been experimentally verified, showing that non-locality is fundamental to the nature of reality. As you may recall, Albert Einstein had two famous objections to quantum physics. First, God does not play dice with the universe, he said, meaning that the statistical nature of quantum physics does not mean that nature itself is statistical. In effect, he was saying we shouldn't project our scientific ignorance onto nature. Both Bohm and Einstein, who were close colleagues at Princeton for a time, objected to this indeterminism of quantum physics. Einstein and Bohm also shared a strong conviction that there are deeper hidden variables that are not detected by the crude net of science, that the water of reality flows through this net, and we miss much of it. We now know this is basically true because 94% of the cosmos is regarded as dark matter and dark energy. We know nothing of what's going on there. In 1952, Bohm did the impossible. As physicist John Bell put it, Bohm developed a deterministic theory of quantum physics that was built upon non-locality at its foundation. But non-locality was Einstein's second and greatest objection to quantum physics. He thought it was absurd, and he famously dismissed it as spooky action at a distance. In fact, for this reason, although he loved Bohm, he did not promote Bohm's new theory of quantum physics because Bohm built non-locality into its foundation. When physicist John Bell discovered Bohm's theory, he was truly blown away, and he spent some 12 years trying to get rid of non-locality mathematically because he shared Einstein's disdain for it. Finally, he published his famous Bell's theorem in 1964, which provides a brilliant experimental criterion that enables the possibility of testing all this in the laboratory. But what Bell said about Bohm's work, as he delved into it deeply, was that David Bohm led him to realize that non-locality cannot be dispensed with. It is fundamental to quantum physics and indeed to reality and nature itself. And then beginning in 1978 with John Clauser, and later in 1982, which is when I first heard about all this, with French physicist Alain Aspect, both of these physicists conducted experiments proving non-locality. And I got very excited about this at that time, about 40 years ago, because this was beginning to provide experimental evidence pointing to the essential oneness of all of reality, which the mystics have been affirming for centuries. After this followed a whole series of subsequent Bell test experiments carried out by Anton Zeilinger and others over the next 35 years, which plugged all manner of conceivable loopholes to ensure that this experimental proof of non-locality is inescapable. And it is. And so finally, last October, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to Clauser, Aspect, and Zeilinger for their series of experiments that essentially prove the non-locality of quantum physics. This means that quantum entanglement is real. So Bohm was right. Bell was eventually converted reluctantly to Bohm's view, and Einstein was wrong on this point, which he called spooky action at a distance. It is real. And in fact, it is the basis today of supercomputing, which is aptly called the second quantum revolution. Unfortunately, the Nobel Prize Committee, along with many contemporary physicists, mistakenly concluded that Einstein's and Bohm's favored hidden variable theories have also been proven wrong. But this is not the case. As physicist Tim Lawden points out, John Bell was one of the strongest supporters of Bohm's hidden variable theory, which is called Bohmian mechanics today. And Bell affirmed that Bohm's theory eliminates much confusion by showing that the vagueness, subjectivity, and indeterminism in the standard Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics are not forced on us by experimental facts, but by deliberate theoretical choice. That's a quote from Bell. In layman's terms, what all this means is that there exists a fundamental, immediate, interconnected unity of the entire cosmos beyond space and time. And in a sense, this experimental proof of non-locality is the closest thing we have to scientific proof of the spiritual oneness of everything. Had David Bohm and John Bell been alive today, they might well have shared this Nobel Prize. You can read more about that in the foreword to the book. So what Bohm did was truly remarkable, and to help illustrate it further, I heard a talk by the Dalai Lama about 35 years ago, in which he said, if you want to understand the deepest secrets of the universe, there are 4 steps. First, study the outer physical universe. Second, study the inner consciousness universe. Third, study the relationship between these two. And fourth, applying the above 3 steps, you can then come to know the deepest secrets of the universe. As the great tantric scholar Ajit Mukherjee said, if you come to know the deepest secrets of the body, you come to know the deepest secrets of the entire cosmos. So these 4 steps are basically study the physical universe, then the consciousness universe, then the relationship between the two, and finally from these 3, you can come to know the full mystery of all that is. Bohm essentially followed this schema. For step 1, Bohm was a major contributor to quantum physics and revolutionized it and developed a whole new theory, now called Bohmian mechanics, which is only now finally beginning to be recognized as a compelling theory for the understanding of quantum physics in major universities across the globe. For step 2, Bohm carried on a deep dialogue and inquiry with spiritual masters such as Krishnamurti and the Dalai Lama to deeply understand the spiritual dimension of reality. And then he grappled deeply with step 3. What is this relationship between the outer and the inner, between the consciousness and the physical aspects of the cosmos? After decades of research, Bohm's answer for step 3 was the Holomovement. For Bohm, the Holomovement denotes the totality of the cosmos as an unbroken wholeness in undivided flowing movement without borders. It has a fractal or holographic structure that enables every element to reveal detailed information about every other element in the universe. So the Holomovement integrates scientific, spiritual, aesthetic truths and sensibilities, including all forms, visible and invisible. Bohm also articulated 2 fundamental aspects of the Holomovement, which he called the explicate order and the implicate order. The explicate order is that subset of the Holomovement that is directly perceptible to the human mind and senses. It's essentially our 5 senses plus the mind, which is the subset of reality that we humans can directly perceive and experience. This is called the explicate order. Everything else is the implicate order. So what is the relationship between the explicate and implicate orders? At first blush, you might think, well, the explicate order is the main reality. It has 100 billion galaxies, each of which has 100 billion stars. That's primary reality, and the implicate order is some kind of secondary reality, an ethereal information field or something that subtly infuses the explicate order. But for Bohm, it was precisely the opposite. The explicate order, he said, is the secondary peripheral reality. It's like the ephemeral foam on the waves of the ocean. whereas the implicate order is the entire ocean itself. So that gives you a sense of the profundity of Bohm's thinking. This new book takes Bohm's Holomovement and fleshes it out in practice in detail across many disciplines in an integral way. And it does this with beautiful contributions from many of the best and brightest global thought leaders. Just to give you a sense of the content of this book, and I'll just rattle this off without explaining it all, just listen for a moment to hear the vast and extensive topics and perspectives that are covered in this book. It begins with a foreword and a preface and an introduction by Emmanuel Kunzelman and Jill Robinson, who've done a fabulous job editing this book. And then it's divided into two major parts, the attributes of the implicate order and the attributes of the explicate order. The first part on the attributes of the implicate order includes chapters on naming the nameless, the cosmology underpinning the holomovement, the holotropic attractor, a holistic design and biomimicry, supercoherence and the intelligence of the cosmos, values and consciousness, the holomovement and transformational agenda for social change, the Sophia century, the divine feminine, ecological civilization from domination to partnership, and the politics of being. Quite a lot there. And the second part, after an interval called The Whole is All There Is, launches into the attributes of the explicate order, with chapters on the holomovement in integral vision, experience, practice, and action towards wholeness, healing the noosphere, the essential role of education, the unitive narrative, the art of altruism, redefining our true nature, building bridges toward unitive healing, declaration for unitive justice, a mycelium network in action, the well-being of all life, the holomovement as a name to a new story, the holomovement as a return to wholeness, and the soul of the holomovement. So this book is truly a fantastic and expansive contribution to our contemporary world. I want to conclude by saying that the holomovement is a living and scientifically rigorous manifestation of the ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. I'd like to suggest that the holomovement is utterly unique in spiritual cosmologies because it's solidly rooted in science with direct connections to quantum physics. Bohm came up with it by deep contemplation on quantum physics and the Schrödinger equation and what he called the quantum potential, and tremendous theoretical work that he did, informed by his intensive spiritual dialogues. So the holomovement has very strong roots in science, more so, I believe, than any other spiritual philosophy. But then the holomovement also expands out from there into this grand fractal cosmology and epistemology. It articulates the fundamental fractal structure of the cosmic holoverse. And this is very important because as above, so below also applies in reverse, as below, so above. The holomovement therefore implies a practical, inductive, fractal epistemology. And this is the fourth step in the Dalai Lama's schema. It is precisely how the mystics know much of what they know. They apply this correspondence principle in reverse, as below, so above. To give an example, I was out in the woods one day and I saw this beautiful evergreen tree, and I went up to it with all these beautiful branches hanging down, and every branch was a huge amount of these gorgeous blades or fronds hanging down. I looked at one of these blades in detail, and it had all these intricate structures. It was so beautiful. And then I turned it 180 degrees up, and all these mini blades on it spread outward, and voila, it became an exact replica of the entire tree. Its stem was the trunk, and its mini blades were the branches. It was so beautiful, as a miniature fractal of the entire tree. So here's what I want to leave you with. Just as that little blade was a replica, or rather a revelation of the entire tree, so the whole tree itself is a miniature manifestation or revelation of a larger cosmic tree. And so too, each human being is a microscopic or microcosmic revelation of the divine or supreme being. This is not just a metaphor. It's the truth, even if it's normally hidden from us. So I'd like to leave you with a question and a joyful little exercise. Each one of us has personal access to the Holomovement deep within as the inner fractal reality of our being. And in the depths of our being, it opens us to the secrets of the universe when we attend to it. So how have you experienced, and how can you experience the insights through the Holomovement as it moves holographically in and through your own being? Thank you very much. And thank you, Deborah and Kurt. Thank you, Emmanuel and Jill, for such a beautiful project.